Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
And now, with a big round of applause from our souls, we welcome and elevate Alex Skorik for another beautiful teaching. Thank you, Alex, for consistently being here with us and trying to help us to understand more about this knowledge, especially me. Even though I'm not a newcomer, sometimes I think I am. But thank you again for being with us and sharing, not only in this platform, and many other platforms around this planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for getting this show going today. And just confirm, please, audio video is okay?
Perfect. We see your screen. Yeah.
And I want to welcome everybody to the North American team meeting here, and especially to the people from all around the world who are great contributors to making this meeting a very big success. And it is a big success, and the reason for it is because we have been able to accomplish a milestone. And so this is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teaching in Plasma Science. We are conducting the basic outer space session, and this session is called the Reality Dimension. And my name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is October the 16th, 2022. This is the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. And the milestone, of course, is we've been 2 years at this particular program, and we've tried to bring some semblance of an organization. And so you can see by the chart there that we went through basic teaching, basic understanding, basic knowing, insight, earth space, inner space, and we are now at the conclusion of basic outer space. And we've had to go down this path because it's very difficult to keep up with all the advancements, and there's nothing wrong with that. The thing is that each of us go at our own rate, and so one of the beauties of recordings is that you can log into them at your leisure, and we have thousands of hours of recordings in the archives, and all of this is reflecting our little tiny red dot in the universe there, that little thing in the bottom right-hand corner we call man's universe. And this is all based on the universal order of creation of matters, which is book number 1 from Mr. Keshe. And we're trying to figure out who is doing the calling here and who is the guiding hand. And we know what the answer is, it's just we don't understand the mechanics. And we want to see, well, what is our part in this? And so we see that we have a soul, as shown in the book number 3, The Origin of the Universe. And then there's a link, and that's the book number 2, The Structure of Light. And so all of these 3 books are helping us search for outer space. And of course, in outer space, we've all wanted our little piece of the pie. And we don't really know where it is, so it's just somewhere in the sky. And so this makes it like a phantom, this phantom pie. So a phantom is something that's apparent to the senses, but has no substantial existence. Well, you know, these satellites that are going around, are they pie in the sky? Or can they become spaceships? Are we the satellites? Are we the dream satellites? Which would make us the dream spaceships, wouldn't it? And then which dimension is the reality dimension? Because now we see that there are various dimensions within the range. And the range that we've chosen is Earth. That's our sentimental pie in the sky. And when you can imagine the vastness of this particular sky, and you see, well, how do we find Earth? And so, you know, we say, well, I'm looking for Earth. Well, where is that? So you have to have some kind of boundary creation. And so we've been very skillful at saying, well, this is not me and this is me. So this is not Venus and this is not Mars, but this is Earth. And this is me somewhere on Earth. So we just have this sentimentality to come here. But the real sentimentality is with our own space, what we call man space. And so the whole purpose of the teachings is really from our point of view and the skills that we have to learn. Because we've already learned something insofar as we came to Earth space. But then on Earth space, we move around. And we have a variety of things that we're capable of doing. So, you know, our soul can operate on the plasma state level. Our emotions operate on GANS levels. And then, of course, our physicality, which is what we all see and what we all attune to first, you know, is part of our body and our body in our environment. And so all of this has to do with man space. And the thing is that when we're looking for confirmation, we look for the convergence of the transmission and transition zones. And when they come together, they create the transmutation zone. And so we find that it becomes a balanced mag-graph positioning. And when the balanced mag-graph is in its position, it's transparent. So what is the reality dimension then? And so we can attune ourselves to a launch point and a landing point and some space in between. And we often wonder, you know, well, what is that space? Is that in outer space? But it seems like every space is some space. And this may sound like a silly notion. It's not silly compared to what we've been going through. Because what we're talking about is the soul limitations. And that comes from our understanding or lack of understanding, shall we say, of the difference between physical reality and plasmatic reality. We're looking for that reality dimension. And when we're looking for that, and people say, well, what are you doing with the plasma? What is plasma? Plasma is kind of an energy state, and there are many different kinds of energy states. So our understanding of energy state is basically Earth space. So we're looking for outer space. So the best way to find outer space is to at least know where inner space is. And we did that, but we're still looking for outer space and can't seem to find it. But, it's kind of important. And if important is not important, well, don't worry about it. Nothing's important. What we help us is our basic rules. And because of these plasma states, we understand that they have different energy levels. And these energy levels can increase or decrease by at least an order of magnitude. And so they have basic rules where the higher energy feeds the lower energy. And so when we add this energy, we call that natural creation. But when we diminish this energy, we call it natural decay. But there's another energy transfer level, and that is catalytic. So it's non-consuming. And our best reference of that is the sun. It comes up every day and it gives all day long. And we have no say in that. The energy transfer rates are higher in the higher plasma states, and also by many orders of magnitude. And this is very significant. We haven't really touched much on this because it's part of more advanced teachings. But fundamentally, we have to understand that plasma absorbs fields and plasma is a barrier of fields. And so that's all fine and dandy. But why does plasma sometimes work and sometimes it doesn't work? And that is because plasma is bound to the ethos of the universe. And this becomes the ultimate lesson. So in the meantime, when we're looking at just the basic lessons, we're looking at what we call the fundamental principle of the twinity. We see that there's a relationship between the electron and the proton. And besides the size difference, we find that the amount of the magnetic fields is transferred to the electron is transferred from the large twin plasma of the proton. And so you have this symbiotic balance, even though that one is much larger than the other. And so this marriage is what we call an atom. It's a proton-electron combination, which we call an atom. And we don't know where it is. We're not saying which dimension it's in, but it is a core component dimension. And so to establish an atom, it has to be gravitational. But if that atom's in motion, like a ray, then it has to be magnetical. And so it clearly points out that there's a difference, even though there doesn't seem to be a difference. And the reason for it is because this motion is a two-way street. First of all, you're coming from a source that is greater, and it creates these two byproducts. Through the nuclear decay of the neutron, one of the byproducts is the PM6 and the other byproduct is the atom. So we said the PM6 are magnetical and the atom is gravitational. And so this becomes part of the ray launch dimension. Where is this dimension? It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you have reference points. In other words, that you have a launch field and a landing field, and that you have the PM6, which are part of ray creation. And so you have the three references of the basic dimension, the x-axis, the y-axis, and where you have ray emission. And then you have the z-axis where you have ray absorption. And this is all done at light speed. So not only did we not say which dimension, we didn't say which light speed. And so when we look at the difference between the plasmatic spectrum and the physicality spectrum, we find that there's another dimension. This is the covalent bond dimension that is in between these two. It allows us to bridge from the plasmatic spectrum to the physicality spectrum. Is this what we call the reality dimension? We can't see it, we can't touch it, but it is there because the travel from the plasmatic to the physical or the physical to the plasmatic is a two-way street, and it's constantly in process. And then with the PM ticks, they're also constantly in process, and they become part of what we call the dilution of the plasma. And we have different charges and different spices, and this difference allows for the over 8 billion combinations of souls on this planet. And understand that each one of our souls has over 70 trillion cells in the body, and each of those cells has a soul. So we can see that the variety and the spice of life is quite spicy. And so this makes for a wonderful planet. It's one of the reasons we are in heaven. And this has always happened because of a basic rule. And that is the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. And what strength is it? What strength is the higher strength? And what strength is the weaker strength? And how do you know the difference? And which dimension are we talking about? So we just have to know the basic rules of the game, where we're talking about the magnetical force fields of attraction and repulsion, which attraction is gravitational, repulsion is magnetical. But in fact, the magnetical is the feeding. And so it's feeding to something, and it's feeding to the gravitational, and the gravitational has to feed back. It's just like you go to a restaurant and, you got to stop feeding at some point in time and pay the waitress. And don't forget to give her a tip. So all of this is part of the creation of the universe. And we look at it with book number 1 in its singularity, and you say, well, how is the universe created? So don't forget, the universe exists from energy, and energy is always in motion. So if it's in motion, it has to go somewhere, and to go somewhere, it has to go to something. And so all things are working in combination. And the problem for us here is we can't decide which dimension are we talking about, and we can't decide which field strength we're talking about either. But what we do know is that there is a magnetical feeding with the PM ticks, and that brings us together to form a basic plasma-gen conversion, which consists of principal matter, transition matter, and convergence matters. And when it comes together in a balanced field, which we call a maggrav, that becomes a non-visible gravitational field. But we take that field and we interact it with an environment, and then take that combination and look at the product. The product is inertia, the field interaction. The interaction between the maggrav condition of one, which is man space, and the maggrav condition of the other, which is earth space, and that becomes the inertia. And so we see that we are part of the process in that regard. And as such now, despite the fact that this picture is so vast, we do have choices. And we have to make these choices as if we're the last man, because we can't turn around and ask for help if there's no one there to help, because we are part of the process. And one of the things that we can do is we can enhance the feeding by turning it on or by turning it off. We can also strengthen these fields by either increasing them or decreasing them. And we can change our position by enhancing or diminishing the energy field strength, which creates a movement. And so we see this example exhibited in the cups of life, and we see 2 cups of life, and inside we've seen something happen inside that inner space. But we're still looking for outer space, and we don't know where that is. And of course, if it's all things in combination, So we know what's inside the cups of life, but where did it come from? What point, that nebulous point, is the source that connects us to this inner space. And so when we review the cup of life, we find that we created magnetical and gravitational fields in there. And we created against. So we look in the glass bottle. The glass bottle is transparent. But inside the glass bottle, we have water, and the water is transparent. And inside the water, we have the gas. The gas is kind of weight. And so this all becomes part of our biosphere dimension. We created this. We created this in our environment. And this is the feedback that we get. And so another feedback is that there's a hole in the gas. And it's not that it's a hole where it's gone. It hasn't vanished. It is just transparent. We can see from one side of the hole to the other hole. But, you know, what we don't see is the guiding hand behind it. And that hole is only in the middle, and it's not on top, it's not on the bottom, and it's not, you know, it's well centered. And so that is the feedback that is giving. And so we find that the feedback is a feeding byproduct. In other words, something fed to create that hole. And the manifestation of that whole is the feedback. And so what we see is actually the feeding byproduct. And so all of the ganses that we can produce, when we look at the periodic table of elements, we can produce all of them. But in this simple cup of life, we just produce CO2 GANs, calcium GANs, copper GANs, zinc GANs, amino acid GANs, and water GANs. And that's a pretty busy cup of life. And so we created a second cup. And it too has a magnetical and gravitational field. But it has a difference. And that difference is that it's more physical. And the first cup is very emotional, which affects our mental emotions and also our physical emotions. And then we have the physicality, which affects our brain and our body. And the two work together. In combination, they created another field we call the cup of inertia. And it interacts with something. And that, of course, is the environment. So we have the cup of earth. And it too has a magnetical field and a gravitational field. So when we put these 5 cups together, we find that they all have a magnetical and gravitational field, and they all have a soul. And the 5 cups collectively have a magnetical field and a gravitational field and a soul. So we didn't specify the dimension. And we didn't specify which soul. Actually, we didn't specify a lot of things, but we happen to be in Earth space, so we understand it is something that we could do. And as such, what we could do is what's important to us. And so what's important to us is our soul, our cup of soul, our cup of emotion, and our cup of physicality. That's what's important with respect to man space. And so our existence in man space is subject to our existence in Earth space. So we have to take into account the Earth space and the inertia, that is the energy field between the Earth space and our man space. And that is what we depend on for our feeding system. And that feeding system becomes part of that feeding dimension. So we didn't say which dimension, but seeing as we're still on Earth space, we know pretty well that it's the Earth space dimension. But the thing is that there are binding energy paths. In other words, the energy comes in and more comes in. As more comes in, it binds it, and it does this through absorption. The absorption is initiated through the force field of attraction. So this becomes a gravitational energy path. But we can go to a higher energy level. We can elevate this energy level. So from our maggrav condition, we can actually give out and give out more. And what we're giving out is the emission of energy. And we do this through repulsion. And repulsion becomes a part of the magnetical field force. So these two are done simultaneously. So as we're looking at the plasma feeding dimension, this becomes the maggrav feeding dimension, where the energy is coming in and the energy is going out simultaneously. And so we see the stability within the Earth space, and we see the stability within the Sun space. There's not a lot of stability with the man space. The man space has some kind of point within the man space field, and from that point we radiate out. And that radiation, of course, we know is a feeding radiation. And that feeding radiation is representative of our inner space spectrum. So simultaneously, we have a feedback radiance, and that feedback radiance mirrors our inner space spectrum. And so we have two types of manifestation. We have a plasmatic manifestation and a physical manifestation. And so we're just looking at the dynamic plasma boundary of our own manifestation. But obviously, that's a very, very narrow-minded way of looking at things, because it's only looking at ourselves. What we need to look at is the other dimensions, the other dynamic plasmas. And so, as we said, there's also a plasma interaction field, and that becomes a dynamic interaction. So we know that we have a feeding radiance, and we know that we have a feedback radiance. And so the question then becomes is, what are we feeding to, and what is it that's feeding us back? And in our pursuit, what we're really looking for is that reality dimension. Who are we? You know, we seem to know this is me and this is not me, but then we really don't know who is me. And so as we go through these dynamic plasma dimensions, we find that we now can travel. We have the technology to allow us to do this. And the question is, well, which dimension? Which is the reality dimension? Because we're supposed to go everywhere. And how do we know we can do this? Because the PM ticks tell us this. The PM ticks tell us that when forces come together, they create this maggrav condition of the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. But there are two types of activity that go on with respect to man space. And one is the universal feeding through self-enhancement. And on Earth space, we have resorted to the loosh harvesting, which is self-consuming and is detrimental not only to man space, but to Earth space, and beyond. Because this is all what we're talking about is instantaneous travel from that physical launch point to that physical landing point. We have zero time travel. And there are no window seats. There's no time to even blink. What do you need a window for? And so we go from one dimension to another dimension. Well, which dimension is that? It's instantaneous travel from whichever dimension to whichever dimension. And so for us, the question is, well, which is the reality dimension? Is the reality dimension the launch point? Is the reality dimension the landing point? Or is the reality dimension the travel point? And so we find that we have created boundaries of thought. And these are man-made boundaries of thought. They're not universal made boundaries of thought. And so we create this me-ness and say, this is me and this is my mental weed. And I'm going to give it to you because this is not me. Oh, maybe this one's me. Oh, this other one's, that's not me. And the other one, no, that's not me either. But I'm going to give it to you all. And so we find that we're creating a new reality. So this becomes how reality dimensions are created. And they come from the point within the man space. So why are there limitations and why are there boundaries? Because obviously you cannot contain this. You broadcast all over. The fact that you decide this is not me and this is me is no, never mind. It really doesn't matter what you think. Because the fact is, as soon as you think, you broadcast. You cannot qualify your thinking in the process of thinking. This becomes an important reality point. You cannot just do good on Sunday. You cannot just do good because you think, well, now's the time to do good. It's like being sincere. You can't fake being sincere. And so, as we're looking for outer space and looking at it from behind the sun, we can see that we have the sun space, and there's the earth space, and then our land space, and our satellites and moon space, and all of these fields are overlapping on the road to Mars space. And Mars space is also there. And so somehow we can travel through all of these different spaces. And not one of them is outer space. We have no proof of outer space. We've been looking at it for 6 weeks now and we can't find it. We have found sun space. We have found planet space, moon space, and even the space in between, we found that. And we know that we found the launch points and the landing points, but where is this outer space? And so all what we've really found is that maybe we've thought a little bit more beyond our little tiny perfect world. And it's still tiny and it's still perfect. The rest of the universe is very vast. And so our position and our awareness is just this near space, and that is a near space. So that means that there's a far space. But where's this outer space? And is there a guiding hand? And when we dream, we have our own dreamscape. And we couldn't find that in outer space either. We just found it in our dreamscape. And we don't really know what position it's in. And then there's areas that are far bigger, other galaxies. And where are they? Are they in outer space? Well, I can see it. And if you can see it, well, it's not in outer space. So the one thing that is common to this whole thing, and it's going to be the common thread, the common denominator, the soul of the man, that's the essential you. That's the you that is interacting between the plasma gen state and the matter gen state. And then, of course, we have the soul of the body. Soul of the body, that's a surrogate you. That's the interaction between the plasma gen and the environment state. And so there's the soul of the man and the soul of the body. And the manifestation may be non-tangible or tangible, or non-visible or visible. And so what we're talking about is the plasma feeding, which leads to this manifestation, but we don't know if it's a plasmatic reality or a physical reality. We don't know which reality dimension it is. And then we add the emotion of presence, and we find that the energy and motion of the motion of presence is also at a manifestation point. And we just have to take that into account as well, because isn't that what launches us from the launch field, and isn't that what directs us to the target field? So basically, we've always been looking at the difference between the physicality and the plasmatic reality. We see one as the feeder and the other as the feedback. And we've been dominated by our own viewpoint of being physical. And yet we haven't been able to understand motion. And so we see that the ray motion is actually creation. And so if we're creating on the one side, that creation is a two-way street where you have natural creation and natural decay. That's one side of one street. The other side of the street also has a natural decay and a natural creation. And so that's a two-way street. And then we have that bonding fudge factor in between, isn't it? That's us. That's us, because we don't know. We don't understand the relationships. We use the cups to help us with the relationships. And so we see that what is man space is the soul cup, the emotion cup, and the physical cup in combination with the interaction of the earth cup and the product of that interaction, which is the inertia. We're still trying to find this phantom field. So we find that in one man space, we have two souls, two emotions, and two physicalities. So we found that we had an inner space within an inner space. Still looking for outer space. And we find that the earth space is our space of physicality. And we have the inertia as the interaction between the man space and the earth space. And we have these satellites. And so these satellites operate the same way. It's just that they move. Now that they move, they still have a reference to the Earth space. But let's change this around and say, let's change the dimension. Does it have to be Earth space? So when we look at these satellites on Earth, and we find that we have our physicality, but we find that the product of the physicality is not the source of the physicality. So our physicality is not us. Although we say this is me and this is not me, well, you are the product of what you are. And so what you are is a soul, and you're traveling through the satellite pathways of the satellite souls. And this is how we create the peace stone. And yet we can do this on the Earth space. The double rainbow shows us that this is possible. And so speaking of the Earth, and this is the most important reference that we have, because we are on Earth at this point in time, is that there's a sequencing of the souls. And so what attracted the soul of the man? It was the interaction of the soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth. So what attracted the soul of the body? Well, first we had to have the soul of the man, and it interacted with the soul of the earth. Well, how did we manifest physically? Well, we had to have the soul of the body, and it interact with the soul of the earth. And so we just find the common denominator is this soul of the earth. The soul of the earth is a fundamental relationship for our physicality. And so in our pursuit of outer space, we know that there's a soul of the sun and there's a soul of the earth, and then there's a soul of the man. But where is that? And so we found that our physicality is in earth space. So the physicality of the body, the physicality of man space, is part of the physicality of the earth body. And the soul of the body works with the man space body. So therefore, the soul of the earth body has to work with the physicality of the earth body. So these are all soul of the earth relationships. We're not in outer space. So we set up these limitations. And these limitations even affect the nuclear science. As we transcend beyond the limitations of nuclear science, we find that it has to do with the speed of light. And the speed of light is governed by a lot of things. We have to take into account this other thing. We say it's the ethos, which includes morality, compassion, and courage, all part of creation. Life wants to live, so this is what's important. And so when we look at the speed of light, if it's visible, then that's part of physical space. But if it's invisible, it's part of non-tangible space. And so we find that the reason we're able to connect with the rest of the universal community, and we do this on a daily basis in our dreaming, is because the soul of the body is faster than earth light. The soul of the body operates on spirit light. And the soul of the man is faster than spirit light. And what speed is it? And how do we move? And where is this outer space? And so we find that the transcendence to heaven, which actually is earth, is faster than earth light. But it's also faster than Mars light, because earth light and Mars light is at the same speed, and that is the slowest speed. So the slowest speed really becomes what we call materialization. So the materialization or dematerialization is specific to physicality. The manifestation point is specific to the reality dimension. And we haven't identified where this reality dimension is, because we're still searching for outer space. And how can you search for outer space when all we keep finding is our materialization, our physicality, and we're ignoring the field strengths of the souls? And where exactly are they operating? And we wonder why we're having this trouble in the pursuit of happiness. Because we failed on the launch pad. Man has never launched a rocket into outer space. We don't even know the rules of outer space. Are the Earth space rules the same as inner space rules or outer space rules? Are they? So we see that we have a peace dome, and this is part of our inner space dome, and it circumnavigates the entire planet, and we connect to it. We connect it in our dreams, and we connect in our awake state. And these fields are overlapping. And the bad news is it causes us responsibility. We cannot abdicate our responsibility anymore, as our world leaders have done enough abdicating of responsibility on our behalf. If we want to bring peace to this planet, we have to understand that the biosphere of peace is our existential crisis now. We have to learn how to harvest the plasma energy of the plasma universe. We have different feeding choices. We have to abandon this energy binding at the expense of others. When we double cross one, we double cross the other. And it locks the gates that allow us to transfer. Out of our man space abuse. And yes, it is abuse. We've been abused scientifically, academically, spiritually, and socially. And we had no choices. Because it was obvious from the start that we have a proof of concept from the start. We had a preference and sentimentality. Our preference was to come to Earth. And there was a longing to come to Earth, which is why we were born. And so shouldn't it be automatically assumed that that's the way things work? And somehow, some way, that was all changed around? I mean, not only were we born, but we were born using the outer space system. We weren't born with a rocket. We were born into an inner space without a rocket. And we arrived on this target, Earth space. We did it without a rocket. Obvious. It was obvious. Obvious is obvious. But the question is this only our half part of the trip? Are we still looking to complete the round trip? Or is this the completion of the trip? And now we're looking to do a new trip. So the thing that we know for sure, is that we are inherently peaceful. And it is because of this inherent characteristic that allows us to enter into the universal community. And likewise, it is an inherent characteristic of the universal community. And so if we're looking at why we can't find outer space, is because we have been abusing this inherent characteristic of man space. And so as part of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute and KFTV all around the world, we talk about where science meets the soul of man, with a caveat for peace. Because that's the universal way. And we know that because as we went into our spaceships and we've seen maybe a reverse dreamscape happen where we had excitable visitors come in. And the question is, wow, which reality dimension did they come from? And are we ready to know that answer? You know, we'd like to know that answer, but like, would we really like to know that answer? We will find out. And this is the excitement that we've generated because we're in the post-June the 6th, 2022 era, where we can now make choices. So the choices that we've been pursuing is to understand our Earth space. And in order to find the outer space, we had to look for inner space. And so we found our inner space. We still haven't found outer space. So let's examine, go back to the beginning, and we find that 1 and 1 is more than 2. Where we have 2 feeding dimensions and 3 feedback dimensions. As observers, we're none of those 3 dimensions. We're in a 4th dimension somewhere. Where is that dimension? It's out there somewhere. 3 dimensions. Some higher energy set of 3 dimensions. And we're none of those dimensions. And we understand the lower dimensions here, the Magrav conditions. We're none of those 3 dimensions either. And there are other dimensions, somewhat higher. And we're none of those dimensions either. In fact, we're none of this. We don't know where this is. Is this in near space or is it in far space? Is it in dream space or some galaxy somewhere? And we say we know where outer space is. We don't know where outer space is. It's not on this page. And we're not part of these dimensions because we're the observers. We are in transition. We are the reality dimension. And the reality is that outer space is not a place. Outer space is a method of energy transfer. Energy in motion. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teachings on plasma science, calling all Earth space patriots. There's a World Peace Treaty that needs to be signed. Sign it with a pen. Sign it with your heart. Sign it with feeling. Understand that the Earth has overlapping fields of life with freedom from boundaries. And these reality dimensions are not affected by whether they're near space or far space, but our earthbound physical and emotional transformation is assisted through understanding how we can do the transmutation from this transparency point to this manifestation point and beyond the nebulous point of the universal inner space of freedom. So that takes care of the near and that takes care of the far. And to operate properly, this is the universal refugium of the nebulous life, the universal community, because they're out there, they're in any of these dimensions, and there are connections. And these are outer space connections. And because they're there, they put a lot of stress on the man-made boundaries of thought. This is why plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. This is the end of the lesson. This is the end of the basic outer space series. So welcome to the outer space age. Thank you all for allowing me to present.
Thank you, Alex, very much. Does that mean we've arrived? Or we still need to find our way around? You said this was the end of the teachings. I was thinking, oh no, we're needing more.
No, this is the end of the basic outer space teaching. Have we arrived? What we have arrived at is face to face with the big lie. Unfortunately for us, we have the big truth.
Well, thank you very much indeed for taking us around the universe, so to speak, in less than 60 days, as they used to say, around the world in 60 days. But again, we go back to that example. Mr. Keshe says that the universe exists and operates within the structure of the man. The man exists and operates within the structure of the universe. Are we talking about the same thing? Remember when Mr. Keshe said we're just really a compressed universe in the structure that we're in now? I think he went into that a little bit, or maybe it was a different teaching. But we seem to be carrying the totality with us, but the access point is where we need to make that connection to it.
So yes, you're correct, Mark.
Okay. Well, Mr. Keshe is correct.
Well, Mr. Kesh is correct. He has a big advantage because he has proof of concept. And we don't have that proof of concept. So we have to look at another proof of concept. And, it's mind-boggling to me, and I hope it's mind-boggling to you, that if you were born on this planet, that there was a ways and means that you got here, and somehow, some way, everything that we're doing in the scientific and spiritual community is contrary to that. It is just unfathomable, hard word to say,
We got you.
hard to believe that so much effort has been put to so little gain. In fact, it hasn't been gain, it has been retrograde. And yet, well, justifiably, we say the universal community is the, higher intelligence. We all have intelligence, just as we all have skills. But if we don't use it, it's as if we don't have it. And so this becomes the Great Awakening. We start to realize what we have, what our capabilities are, who we are and where we are, which dimension are we in. And if we're going to travel, well, if you say that I'm going to travel from Connecticut to New York, okay, well, that's a travel. But you may say, well, I'm going to travel from Connecticut to Arizona. Well, yeah, that's another travel. Or you could say, I'm going to travel from Connecticut to Mars. So the travel is irrespective of distance. The travel is from a start point to an end point. And you are the go-between. So therefore, you are the navigator. And so this is the part where, the first reflex is, oh no, it gives me responsibility. Well, we have delegated responsibility to those who are irresponsible. We now need to take control back. That's because something has changed. And that has changed because we're in post-June 6th era. Over to you, Mark.
All right. Well, everyone has a microphone. I hope you have a question or something you'd like to share with all of us about what's transpired per se in the workshop or in another meeting you were perhaps in, some happenings around the foundation you'd like to share. Alex is open to questions, I do believe.
Hello everyone, this is Galip. I hope you can hear me well.
Clearly.
Hello Mark, and thank you so much Alex for the teaching. I wasn't there for the complete of it. Therefore, I have not really a question directly to you, but I wanted to share a few of my experiences this last week, which during Tuesday and Wednesday during the blueprint days. Is that appropriate?
I think it is. Alex?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sure.
For me, I was aware that Nikolai was going in. I was very happy. Again, I think it was in this meeting last week that he was here as well. as many of you probably know, Nikolai was directly the push for me to come into the foundation 2 years ago almost. So that's why I always felt a special connection.
Oh, we didn't know that. I didn't know that anyway.
Okay. Yeah, so he was in an interview and I saw that interview on the internet. So that's how I came in. And um, it was very fascinating for me. And so on Tuesday, I was ready for it. And on that time I was available. I had made a physical, what I call flight unit egg in when I was in Linz with two magraphs, and I was sitting right in between them, just to because the idea was that that physical system that I made was the satellite as well, a physical version of it that I just made, and I also wanted to become a satellite myself. I signed up for that, even though I know in a way, since I went in the system, that's also pretty much the gist of it. But so I was really sitting for it, and for me, it was a very beautiful experience. It was so profound, so real. Yet, of course, I was just I was just in the physical place, of course, where I was right before it. But it was very hard to distinguish emotional connections to my state before. I was very, very involved in what was happening in Linz. And I was aware of it. I was aware that me even watching the stream, deciding to participate again, was that they all mount up to something. I was aware of it. And that's at some points, because of just other things that were happening around me in the living room, I had to just close the stream, the digital stream, the sounds, and had to make conscious moves to get out of the participation again, and to get in later when the environment was um, ready for me to have a more harmonious experience, because there was just happening a few things, and that's okay. No, and yeah, so that's what I want to share. That was on Tuesday, and on Wednesday I was aware that I already knew that I had so many things to do that day, so I chose to let it go completely on the soul level, without consciously, or not consciously, without willingly, and um, yeah, with the thought, with the line of thinking, participating to the event. And that went a lot smoother for me. I was just able to very happily continue my day on Wednesday and spread the joy and the invitation to peace. That was okay, but it did not intervene in my logos, in my thinking process, or in my physical experience lightly, like it did before. So that's just a small thing that I wanted to share with everyone. I thought maybe it's relevant. I am very happy the way it's going. I'm so happy to constantly learn more and come together with all of you guys from time to time in this digital platform, which is also just something of the physicality. And I'm reading a comment now. I have not listened to any other interviews yet, and thank you, Claudia, as well. I give it back to you, Mark, the microphone, and to everyone else, of course, please let
Well,
let know of yourself.
it's delightful to hear that you happened to come across Nikolai's interview, and that interview led you into the foundation. Is that what you said?
Yes, I
And,
I
and
have
that,
heard of the foundation before, but that was a long time before that.
Mhm.
Yes.
and that's led you to become our Armstrong, as I understand it. As you were the first one, I think it was, what was it, a day or two before the 6th of June? That you actually traveled in this, what Mr. Kesh is calling this front runner in space travel in the dimension of the soul.
It was on June the 6th.
Okay. I was thinking it was a day or two before from my memory, but it was on June the 6th.
On this planet, there were still places where it was June the 6th, and in Austria at the moment
Right.
it was June the 7th.
Okay. So wherever we're talking to someone about this technology, or they overhear our conversation, may lead them into exploring, or even they're overhearing our conversation, a seed may have been planted or something. What was it that in that interview, was there something specific, or did you say, wow, this is what forced you or compelled you to go a little further into it?
It was a very nice explanation of all the work that Nikolai was participating in for the foundation. It was around an hour. So there was also a video of Sir Keshe when he was demonstrating for the first time on video the enhancement unit. There was a lady inside. Do you know that video?
Yes, Ella was sitting in she's the only one I've seen sitting in the unit. I mean, before.
Yes. Yeah. I think I've heard that she's LIS.
Right. I know many people have sat in the unit now, but we don't actually see them sitting in the unit. And maybe, as he said with Dean, they're going to bring in cameras and microphones so we can actually see more. But very, very interesting that that interview touched you to the point of wanting to become part of the foundation. Was that where he showed his star formation and some other experiments he was working on? Or was
I
that
do
something
remember
different?
him talking about the experiments.
Yep.
However, I didn't even watch all of it. Most of the time I listened to, so I don't remember all the things that I saw. But he did show a few things. Like he showed his files. I think he shared his screen. It was also on Zoom. So I do remember there were nice resources in that interview. It was as that's what I saw the video of Mr. Keshe.
Very nice. So we can touch people that we're not even aware we're touching. As we say, we never know when someone may overhear a broadcast in the future or hear something that your fields just communicate to them in a way, as we're trying to do with the world leaders, where we all have different fields, and the combination of those fields will make some matches. Very beautiful, Gallup. Thank you. And even your professors are saying you know more than they do, at least in certain instances. I think you've shared this with us.
Well, I think the learning experience is more than just what we are aware of. So I'm very happy to be part of all the ways that I can learn, and very grateful, especially also now for this group. And I try to balance everything that I can do. I have a few other things still going on. I really enjoyed the messages, and I was it was very nice to see that you picked up a few, Mark. I've been reading some books about what they call telepathic communication by Russell Targ, for example. He has done some research in Canada, not in Canada, in California.
Yes, he was
Uh,
part of the remote viewing, I think, with one of the alphabet systems or at Stanford, and that was part of it. Yep, Russell.
yes.
Yeah.
And he's written a very nice piece. It's a book which summarizes all of the developments in this area. And I just with a lot of resources, academic resources as well to be used in academia, I should say. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how I can further this study, or at least be inspired by this field, inspired by this work among him and many others. Of course, there's other works to make a system for communication in this outer space, or with this outer space, or how to even frame it. I think this is the most
You
correct
already have
place
it.
to ask it.
We all have it already. These systems and links are just sort of pushing us or elevating us, I think, to the point where we're able to realize it or do something with it that we couldn't do before. So we all already have all of this. He's given us the keys to the Rolls Royce, but we're just children, so we don't know where to put the key in to get the vehicle started. But we're learning slowly, slowly. The same way this group is growing slowly, slowly. I think several people have joined this week. Again, I don't know if they're bots. It seems like more bots are in there than actual people, but I think that gets cleared out. But very beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Galeb.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Thank you indeed.
Anyone else have a question for Alex, perhaps? I know you talked about souls being called from the fields of the universe, Alex. I think,
Yes.
and you mentioned about the sun and interaction with its own fields, and the fields of the environment created the earth. Yeah? I think you mentioned that.
Yes, but we were focusing on our own soul and our own physicality.
Right. Now, didn't Mr. Kesh say in this workshop that even the soul has a soul? The
Well,
sun just didn't create the earth or create itself out of the fields. It somehow received fields, he said, from the universe to start that process.
Well, of course, it's all a work in progress or a work in process.
But this idea of the soul having a soul, and then that soul is the one connected to the creator. I thought I heard something like that in this workshop. I don't know if anyone else. Yeah.
This particular concept is one of the most difficult, I think, for people to understand, because there's nothing that we've been taught in school that even comes remotely close to this concept. And it is once you start to examine this particular concept and you say, well, if there's two souls, and then what level do they operate on? And then we've seen through the flight simulation. So if they actually went into outer space, then they went in through a totally different reality dimension. So our whole understanding, our whole education is based on a lot of misunderstanding. And so I believe it was on Thursday, Mr. Kesh mentioned the fact that, the universe is multiple millions of light years away. And I think his words were, it's a load of rubbish. And I was so happy to hear him say that. because that's a fact. You know, because if you use that as a foundation of your knowledge and then you extend that knowledge and try and make explanations, this is a guaranteed failure. So if it's in the visible light, then it's earth light. And if you're measuring the far reaches of the universe in earth light, well, I guess it's like taking a ruler and trying to measure the distance to the moon. So it'll take you a long time to do that. So we're using the wrong tools. And these wrong tools are based on our lack of understanding. But our lack of understanding is based on our lack of teaching. It's our lack of teaching, because our lack of teaching has to facilitate thought, has to facilitate thought, right? Because you don't have enough time to learn everything. You don't have enough time to go to the library and read every book. You don't have enough time to look at every educational film on YouTube. And we know that not enough of us give enough time to the archives of the Keshe Foundation, which is positively brimming with important information. And so once we get this concept that we've never been into outer space, and I look at, I went through my youth and the excitement of going to the moon and all that other jazz, and say, wow, what a big lie, and I fell for it. But of course I fell for it. What other choice did I have? First of all, I trusted those who were deceiving me. And why wouldn't I trust them? They were in positions of so-called authority, so-called academia, so-called knowledge, well, so-called, poker playing, really, bluffing to the point where they hope to never get caught. Well, they're caught. They've been caught. And they still playing poker. Well, you know what? I quit playing poker a long time ago. Okay, because you can't bluff, not when you're dealing with the soul level. That's why I say that, you can't fake sincerity, because it comes from the soul. That is a direct transmission from the soul. And so it's the soul which is actually the traveler, the time traveler. So if the time travel is at zero time travel, the soul is the zero time travel. And when you maybe find that to be shocking, you maybe find that to be questionable, but when you start to apply it to the nonsensical answers that we've been getting all along, and you say, well, wait a second, that which didn't make sense, now I understand why it doesn't make sense, based on the wrong foundation. Apply the new foundation, and all the things fall into their proper slots. All the mail goes into the post office boxes. Boom, all in one go. And this is what's going to happen, because once we break these boundaries of thought, and then we find out what the truth is, and we connect this on a soul level. And why is that important? Because the soul level operates on a higher energy field. In the higher energy field, what do we say? The transition of energy is many orders of magnitude higher in higher energy fields. We've been saying that all along. So.
Right, but this idea of the universe existing and operating within the structure of the man, and the man existing and operating within the structure of the universe. So is the outer what we see outer within, and what's within is the outer? I was just thinking about that. I know Mr. Kesh is bringing us slowly along because, as he told the person, I guess it was in Italy or wherever it was, that when they told Mr. Kesh, you have to give us all the knowledge that's in your head, it all belongs to us. And he said, if I was to do that, that person would have brought his own demise or something. They couldn't handle it. So this is one of the reasons we're being brought along slowly, steadily, slowly, but surely into this, because we couldn't handle it probably all at once.
No, we can't. And you know, for those who have been educated or overeducated, this becomes a real shock. You know, because the education, of course, is an extension based from a foundation. So, you know, you start with the basic education, you know, the university, and then you go on to the PhD levels. But all of this is based on some building blocks of knowledge. But when those building blocks of knowledge get crumbled or disintegrated, then what happens? I mean, look at what happened to the Nobel Peace Prize this week. It has actually been exposed. It is the, you know, Nobel Peace Joke Prize. It has always been. Only now they can't seem to even make it appear as if it's a real thing. I have more to comment on, but I'm going to refrain.
Do you want to tell us who won the Peace Prize? Was it awarded this week or something?
Oh, some obscure thing that happened like 50 years ago.
I see.
Nothing's happened since. It's, you know, things have been kind of dull around the neighborhood.
I thought you were going to say Putin won the Peace Prize this time.
No, I think there's. Never mind.
He still could, as he becomes elevated. Yeah.
You are baiting me. You are baiting me, and I will not bite.
Oh, no problem. I'm not trying to. So, if we have the universe within us, now Mr. Kesh is bringing in these vertical systems, which he said is going to make the work we're doing now look like donkey work. I can't even believe that he even said that. It's like going from the donkey to the Rolls Royce. So if these systems that he's bringing in can replicate any position in the universe for us to see what it would be like to be there, and the universe exists and operates within us, wouldn't you agree that eventually we'll be able to replicate the same positions in the universe? Again, I don't know how you replicate a position you haven't been to, but if the universe is within you, then you already, or the soul already understands that position. What fields need to be put together to create that position? Perhaps.
See, and that is such a good point. Okay, because you are assuming of, you know, this is me and this is not me. You can't do that.
Are you back to that again?
Yes, I am, because you don't know where you've been. Okay, and if the travel is instantaneous, then what are the limitations to the travel?
None.
That's right. So it's not distance. It's not far space or near space. It's all together as one space. But what is the missing common denominator here? That's the soul of the man. That's the soul of the man. And the soul of the man is representative of the soul of the universe. And the soul of the universe is representative of the soul of the creator. Now that we've had a chance to actually think about this and see the connection and understand that there is a connection. And that connection, although it's in a plasma reality, can manifest itself into a physical reality at any time. And so this changes the whole ballgame, because we were born a certain way using the current system. And he has said specifically that we have now surpassed even that system. Well, you know, go look at your baby pictures and really, really think about that. Okay, because what we've done here is you explained how you've been there, and now we have a chance to even change that game. Wow, this is mind-blowing. But
yes, it would be too much for us to handle all at once. Even at the slow stages he's sharing with us, I haven't even understood the obsolete technology. Never mind.
exactly.
Gee.
But we have to do this now, because the peace is the answer not only to the understanding, but the integration with the rest of the universal community. It's our jailbreak. It's our jailbreak. 8 billion people on this planet get set free. Think about that. What's wrong with that picture?
Well, I hope you get a call from your current or next prime minister and thanking you for the work you've been doing, and thanking all of us. We just thank all of us. And again, we're not here to be thanked, and we're not looking for a reward or an award or anything like that. We're just learning to serve more. But that's what came to me when we're doing that moments of silence, that the leaders, others, religious leaders, perhaps you may get a call at some point in the future. Hopefully Mr. Kesh gets the first call, but we may also be thanked for our work, but we don't have to be, as long as we bring it. But I was just thinking that's a distinct possibility as this train moves to a different position.
Well, I'm going to throw another possibility out there, and that the call of thanks may just come from off-world.
Very possible as well. In addition to, yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, we're dragging everybody down.
But now we're going to be elevating across the universe others to be carrying this light of the creator. So there are still some needs. I know he said there are planets that the inhabitants are just learning to hunt, where the inhabitants are just discovering fire. So they're probably, this process of creation never stops. So obviously there's probably a few mishaps in that creation that we need to, and so it's so large that there's more than enough work for all of us to support and maintain the universal peace. Would someone else like to come in and share something?
There is only one thing: we need confidence, and we need to believe we create everything, not somebody else or something else. Everything within us. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Alex. Hello, everybody. I'd like to speak about a point that we have in our group about a person that have chronic disease, degenerative disease, or cancer. Before I read.
No, you said a degenerative disease or cancer or something along that line. Okay.
Yes, in medical, we see that that the point that the patient becomes better physically, we call candle flame for a few days or weeks, but then the death occurs. We are thinking about it, what the soul of physicality trying to pull as much as energy from the soul of the man as possible, I think, because of fear of death, or want to do something that he couldn't do before. We are trying to discuss about it, and if we can discuss about it. Thank you.
You mean discuss something about that here?
Yes, why we can get better before the death happened.
Well,
we see this usually in the medical school, and then the patients, they get better, and after the death occur.
I was just thinking of the candle. And when the candle
Yes.
burns down and down and down, and there's only a little bit of the candle left, normally they say the candle gets brighter just before it goes out.
Yes, is exactly. And the physical body is the same.
Well, when you reach the fields that you need to, unless it's an accident, I guess, when you reach the fields of what you needed here, then you transition. As Mr. Kesh said, some children only live one day. That's all they needed to absorb the fields that they needed to move to the next position, as I understand it. Anyone else want to comment on this, that you see people getting better before they are coming more into balance before they make that transition? This is what's being asked. Alex, that should be an easy one for you.
Oh, certainly.
Okay. Great sage.
Yes, I know everything. But we understand that there's a release of tremendous amount of energy when the physicality is terminated. And the source of that energy is the accumulation into the binding of the physicality. So along the way, we have accumulated other problems because we have deficiencies on this planet. So the illness or is part of the recognition of the souls of this deficiency. And the tendency for that deficiency is psychosomatic. And so once the soul becomes in contact with itself, then the soul answers its own questions. And so the psychosomatic requirement of a physical decay is not necessary. And in fact, what we have is the soul satisfaction. And then the soul is probably fully completing its journey. And that journey is its journey. Each soul has its own determination and predetermination. So each of us on this panel then really can sit back and question, what is our predetermination? And in many ways, this is a good thing that we don't know that, because if you knew that, on such and such a day, you're going to have an accident, Well, what do people do when they say, oh, well, the end of the earth is coming? It's disgusting. They become totally irresponsible, right? Well, you know, if the earth is going to end in next month, then I'm not going to pay the rent this month, and I'm just going to party hard, and that's not what life is about. That is a myopic look at the way of life is on a physical basis, the lowest energy form. So what we're doing is we're drawing energy from the higher fields, and each of these higher fields are higher by at least an order of magnitude. So the transition is then also, and that's where you get this burst, this tremendous burst of energy. You know, one of the things, it just came to my mind. You talk about the burning of the candle. Isn't the wick being nano-coated? And isn't that once the candle is burnt down, that the wick is the longest? So you have the highest superconductor at that point in time?
Could be. Could be.
So we do have to understand energy transfer and our relationship to this energy transfer. Okay, so we are part of the reality dimension. We probably are the reality dimension. But within our reality dimension, we have multiple dimensions. And as observers, we're none of those dimensions, you see. This is the irony of the whole thing. We kind of have our own private little dimension.
Okay, would anyone else like to help Claudia understand more? Maybe Claudia, you can restate the question for us, so we can maybe get a different aspect of what you're trying to get answered here.
Yeah, I understood you only a little bit. Alex, you speak so fast. It's only what we are talking about, why the soul of the physicality have this fear. I don't know. I was thinking this relation, the energy, the
Fluctuation of the energy?
Yes, yes, exactly. And then Mr. Cash said always that the soul of the man takes only the energy that she needs. But why the soul of physicality get better? Why is this the energy? Is the environment?
The soul does not allow that condition to exist anymore. I remember Mr. Kesh saying something about this. But even the best knowledge seekers, he said, will get sometimes do get cancers and things. So I don't understand it completely.
But we get the energy from the environment, 8%, he explained it. But the people, this patient is with this disease. He has all the metabolic always I don't know in English. Sorry, Mark, today is not so good.
Can anyone translate for Claudia so we can get a clearer understanding? Anyone here that Jefferson, are you here? Can we help her to get her point to us? Okay, maybe not.
Hello, Mark.
Oh, thank you, Jefferson.
Oh, thank you, Jefferson.
Hello, maybe it can help.
Hoje o negócio tá travado aqui.
No
Eu tô perguntando para ele, como o paciente ele tá totalmente desnutrido, totalmente com alteração metabólica, Da onde está vindo essa energia antes da morte? Seria só do ambiente?
Ah, ok, entendi. Eu acho que eles já entenderam isso também, Cláudio.
Mas
a
como ele
resposta aqui é o
conseguiria isso?
seguinte. Ok, vou traduzir aqui, eu tentar traduzir.
Okay.
Marco, the thing is that some patients, they are so bad, so low energy in a point of life, and all of a sudden they received a strong energy from maybe from the environment. So as I think you all understood already, they just get bright, good shape, and after all, they just lose the strength, they pass away. And I think Alex had already answered this, but he is wondering where this energy, this transition energy comes from, if it's the environment or somewhere.
It's only from the environment.
No, it's not any longer from the environment. It's from the individual. You see what happens is there's an enormous amount of energy that is consumed in the binding. And once that physicality is released, then you no longer need that energy. And so the release of energy, it becomes like, well, it's the same thing like having a sugar rush. You know, you're having a sweet pastry. It gives you this rush of energy because you're not using it physically. And so the soul takes it all. And you see, there's also reward. There's a reward for the soul because now the soul has achieved what it wants to do, and that is to be free. But this freedom exit is of a higher dimension, higher energy state. And so everything operates at a much more elevated basis. And so all you're looking at is that glimmer between the physicality and the higher energy state. But that glimmer is really the flashpoint to launch, if you will, into the next dimension. Thanks, Jefferson.
Yeah, haven't we heard that from Mr. Kesh? The person doesn't die of cancer, but they die of lack of energy, where the cancer has taken the energy from the person. There is a definite struggle going on for sure. But it's the loss of energy that causes the demise, not so much the cancer, even though obviously it's a factor in it, it seems. Again, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know these things. But we've heard Mr. Kesh say that you don't die of the cancer, you die of the loss of energy.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jefferson.
Did Mr. Kesh also say at the moment that that soul left the physical body, it released 18 times the energy of the bombs used in World War II in Japan?
Yes. I guess the physicality gives up its energy to the soul. Is that correct, your understanding? That's how much energy each body has in it. And again, he talked about, I don't know where I read this. It could have been, I'm not sure. But he said we shrunk the sun down into 2 or 3 microns, which is what, a thousandth of an inch, Alex, a micron, a millionth?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And this is the soul of the man. So we've taken the sun, shrunk it down, and put those 3 microns or 4 microns as the soul of the man in the body. I mean, there's so much knowledge to know here. Even he was going on saying, you know, that the soul didn't create the body, but the soul was given that physicality to operate in. I mean, there's just so many understandings and misunderstandings that I think there's still a few chapters to open up. Wouldn't you agree, Alex?
Oh my God! Well, we're going to open up a new chapter next week. The intermediate classes of the basic series, but
does it cost any more?
Yes, it'd
It
be
does,
extra.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, the double nothing. Anyway, the thing is that oh, you derailed that train.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, it was a very important point. Let's
It'll come back. It'll come back to you.
Okay, let me just
No,
mull that
no.
over again because it's an important point I want to make.
Mhm. Anyone else have something they'd like to share? Would you like to share the story you shared earlier with us about before you came to the foundation, before your husband came to the foundation? Was sharing earlier, perhaps I can repeat the story. He must have been a younger man because she said he was polishing the hubcaps on the car. Are you with us? And in that polishing, and most hubcaps are chrome or, reflection, he saw a face of someone who they hadn't been in touch with for a long time. And come to find out, he saw the face in the hubcap, apparently. When he went into the house, that person had called. Right as soon as he got into the house, the phone was ringing, and it was that person who he saw in the hubcap that was on the car. And the person calling said she was just worried about her grandmother and wanted like a welfare check or wondering if they had heard. So you could see that person's emotion that was worried about the grandmother. Even though none of them were in the foundation, none of them understood, but her emotion apparently was so strong that she connected to and her husband, or Erm's husband, because they had a common friend with the grandmother. And she just called at that right after he went into the house, I guess, to ask if she was okay or could you check on her. So that's, as Mr. Kesh said, don't count it as coincidences anymore. When you think of a person or something else happens and they contact you, it's happened to all of us. Sometimes you'll think about a person and the phone will ring and you say, I was just thinking about you. So these are the energies, I think, or the emotions that we can communicate on the soul level. That was a beautiful story, simple, but yet beautiful. And that was before they knew anything about the plasma technology. So this is going on regardless of whether we want to acknowledge it or not acknowledging. As Mr. Kesh said, we're doing it. We're already doing it. We're just not aware of it. Or it's us who denied that we're doing it or continue to deny. No, that's not real. That was just a coincidence. It just happened. I know I've given people things and I ask for response, and sometimes they'll say, well, I was getting better anyway. I was already better, It didn't have anything to do with what you gave me. So I don't know if they can't confirm, or confirming means, I don't know. But sometimes people like to say, it was going to happen anyway that way. It had nothing to do with the technology. So I say, okay.
Mark, the train's back on track.
Good. I knew it would be.
See, the thing about the advanced technology is you can't dictate the terms. If you look back in history and imagine, for instance, that your Tesla, and it's in the 1890s and you invent a cell phone. We say, oh, we're not going to have these cell phones until the 1980s. who is dictating here? So, once you make a discovery, it's a discovery. It's not like Christopher Columbus where, there's a million people ahead of you, and you made a discovery. Yeah, you made a discovery for yourself. No, we're looking at the new plasma technology, and we've made discoveries. There's no limitation on the discovery. You say, oh, well, I just, I just discovered how to make a milkshake. Okay, well, that's great. And now what you need is, well, I need a straw. That's not the way it's done. It doesn't go step by step like that. Necessity is the mother of invention, and I get it. But, we had rolling cars going back to the early 1900s, but we still have rolling cars. And they're
Right.
all different. There are technologies in place that we've used to improve things in. There's no way that you would come with today's modern transmission without the experience of all those years of having cars, right? You're not going to come out with a transmission and say, oh, well, I have a transmission. What am I going to do with it? Well, why don't you find four wheels and a steering wheel and see if you can get it to move? Well, we're at that point now where we have the capability of energy exchange, the capability of motion, and that capability includes us. And, that this has changed the whole rules of the game. And why June the 6th was important was because at some point in time, those who were responsible were given the opportunity to step up and fulfill their responsibility. And, as per usual, the disappointment sets in. Well, we're not disappointing ourselves any longer. We're in the post-June the 6th era, and we're making our own advances. And the thing is that we make one advance, next thing you know, there's 5 advances. It's like popcorn. All of a sudden, each of these advances keep coming along. And, which one do you pick up? So then we get a chance to prioritize, but there are many, many aces up the sleeve. And they say, well, there's only 4 aces in the deck. Well, guess what? We're not dealing with one deck. So we are on the right path. You want to know proof of concept? Think about it for a change. Think about it. Imagine if they succeed in bringing down the Keshe Foundation, what a black earth this would certainly be. Well, it isn't. This is heaven. Our responsibility is to bring it forward. And the collective soul of this planet demands it. We're part of it, and we have the technology to do it. So it's now a matter of applying what we know.
Yes, and so many of these technologies, as you indicated, were delayed, like the electric car Tesla was driving around in Manhattan, 100 years ago or more? And the steam engine could do the work of so many men was delayed another 100 years or whatever it is. But I don't think this technology is going to be delayed that way, even though they have been dragging it, as we heard. And yes, there are some things. Mr. Keshe said he'll address it at the time. But yes, they're working harder than the Belgians worked too, because this is opening up the freedom of the man, and they don't want to allow that loss of control. I think that's a biggest part of it. We'll be able to move around this planet, this whole idea of the passports and everything else. But yes, we're going to
There is
see it.
one thing
We're
that
seeing it.
there is one thing that we have to remember, that the capability is there. where we see the soldiers on the field drop their guns because they don't know what they're carrying them for. This is going to happen. This has to happen.
Now, I think Randy put something in the chat. During the early years of automotive age, from about 1896 to 1930, as many as 1,800 different car manufacturers functioned in the US, while innovators in Europe had been working on battery-powered vehicles since the 1830s. The first successful electric car in the US made its debut in 1890, thanks to a chemist from Iowa. His sixth passenger was basically an electrified wagon that hit a top speed of 14 miles per hour. By 1990, electric cars were so popular that New York City had a fleet of electric taxis, and electric cars accounted for a third of all vehicles on the road. I never knew that. People liked them because in many ways, early electric cars outperformed their gas competitors. Electric cars didn't have the smell, noise, or vibration found in steam or gasoline cars. They were easier to operate, lacked a manual crank to start, and didn't require the same difficult to change gear systems as gas cars. But again, as Mr. Kesh said, the folly of this electric cars are they're still being powered by gas, natural gas, generated electricity, and oil and coal. So have we moved in any new position? We're powering with the same gas, coal, oil, some nuclear, but there's not much. We were supposed to have 2,000 plants. We only have 100 in the United States or less. But that's the folly at its current stage, that we're using the same energies, gas, coal, that we're trying to get away from, supposedly, to charge the car. So are we doing anything? Really? Hopefully with the new generators, which he said we don't even understand them, we will see a change. As he indicated, you can put one of these on your car and you don't have to worry if you have the money to pay for the gas. You can just drive, as it's a continual process of production of that gas. But no, the electric cars are being pushed and promoted, but yet the energy comes from the same as the gasoline in so many ways. And of course, you don't fill up an electric car in 5 minutes like you would with a tank car. It takes quite a bit more time. So we haven't really made any progress in that area, as I see it, up to this point. Now, maybe when you pull in some solar panels or something like that. I know Gianni had talked about a solar car he was going to show, but he hasn't shown that yet, where I guess they retrofitted some panels on a car, and they can also power the residence wherever they drive up to, as I understand it. So maybe we'll see that in the future.
Can I say something?
Anyone can, yes. We encourage people to open their mics.
I'm thinking, what are we want for the future? Is like a mega city, a flying car, those kinds of stuff, or like a Buddha who disappear from one side of the river and then appear in the other side of the river. Which future we want?
Right.
That is the question.
Will you even need a car?
Yes, that is the question.
Well, maybe if you're going to go to the grocery store and pick up 10 bags of groceries, but I guess if you're going to the store on the dimension of the transmutation, yeah, maybe once in a while you might pick up some physical food or 10 bags of groceries. I don't think that'll be that often because you'll be understanding how to feed yourself plasmatically.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right. We won't need the airplane. We won't need the train. Even Mr. Kesh talked about delivering things from point of manufacture to point of the end user. So there'll be some transmutations going on with many things, I guess. If you needed a new chair, then you don't have to go to the store. You probably can order it online, and then that chair would be transmuted to your location. Again, probably have to give GPS coordinates and so on, elevation and so on, but for the most part, that looks the way it could happen. Again, I say could.
Mark, I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for allowing me to present today. And I hope you enjoyed the trip. And I'm looking forward to carrying on with the next series next week. So I just want to withdraw at this point. Thank everybody for making this such a special event. And withdraw in the background.
Thank you. As long as you keep the cost the same, we're very pleased, Alex.
I will talk to the
Hold
cashier.
the line on that.
Hold the line. Yeah. None of this 1,000% inflation.
Right, and even what Gallup was talking about, this Russell fella Targ, I think he's charging, I believe. You can take one of his classes to start learning, or different classes to learn the remote viewing, and again, not sharing without someone paying for it. And this is what we're learning, I think, from the Kesh Foundation, that this knowledge does not belong to us, but we can share this knowledge. Go ahead. Is someone wanting to say something? Yes, Claudia.
Hello, Mark. Before we go, Alex, can I ask something or discuss about? Is another subject is about the potential difference between the structures of our body as well as the planet in relation to the sun and the center of the earth. We studied 1 week ago about the inner ear and the liquid inside the cochlea, and there are two types of liquid inside of our inner ear with potential difference between them, as well as in all structures in our body, like the chest and the intestine. So liquid is always involved. And we are thinking, how can we transfer this knowledge about the transmutation? We can use the liquid of our body to do this difference density. I don't know. It's only a knowledge that we have, and I want to say for all of you and discuss about it. Thank you.
So you know which way is up, right? You don't sit on the ceiling. And so in space, you don't know which way is up because you don't have a reference point. But on Earth, you have a reference point to the ground. So the interaction of this fluid is what is giving you, shall we say, the GPS coordinate. But I'm going to give you another problem. You know, a fish in the water, maybe the water is so deep it can't see the bottom, and maybe it's, you know, swimming so deeply it can't see the top either. How does the fish know which way is up? So we know physically that the fish has a lateral line. That's that line on the side of the body. And what it does is it it gives a magnetical response. So there's definitely a gradient between the magnetical and the gravitational field force of the environment. So the interaction of this fluid is interacting with the magnetical gravitational field force and making a determination. It makes a determination which way is up. Now this information then is transferred physically. And so in the case of the fish, it navigates with its fins to maintain its position. We navigate with our toes to keep us balanced. And so the response mechanism comes from the ears right down to the toes. And this is discussed in great detail in the health teachings that Mr. Kesh also referenced again with Kostova there, Dr. Kostova. And he went systematically through the different organs of the body. But the thing about it is that the magnetical gravitational relationship comes into play each and every time, and not just individually. In other words, the fluid in the ear cannot operate properly without the toes. They go together, and they're in different dimensions. The toes are very much physical, whereas the fluid in the ears is of a plasma nature, but they work together. And so this is how we exist in the environment, the physical environment. But we're not using the physical environment to exist. We're using the plasma to exist. And then what we're doing in the environment is a manifestation physically of the plasmatic manifestation. Well, this is what we have to understand from a health standpoint. The plasma feeds the physicality. But does the physicality take the message properly? I'm just going to leave it at that point right there. How's that? Are you better?
Okay.
Yes.
Did I speak slow enough?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia.
It's only my thoughts, because we are we have a universe inside of us. So I am trying to do a relation with the knowledge and what you have inside. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Well, have you gone through the health teachings?
Yes, we are studying teaching for teaching. So we have inner ear and cochlea and thalamus.
No. I'm talking about the Kesh Foundation health teachings.
It is closed since December 2021. It's not allowed anybody to see the private teaching, health teaching. So Mr. Kesh said we'll start again, but he didn't say the date for me. So we are waiting.
I wasn't aware of that. But so anyway, what we have to do then is apply the knowledge that we have, the understanding how the energy is transferred, and understand the difference between our physicality and our plasma reality.
Mm-hmm.
And understand that our soul is the navigator of those fields.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have those basics in place, then from there you can build use those as the foundation of your knowledge, and then you can build from there. And so this is why we call it the knowing by connection. once you understand the rules of the game, then you can connect everything else. And so you end up answering your own questions in the process. And then you make the discoveries and you say, well, you know, why am I having this problem? And what is the source of that problem? So you learn to figure out the relationship. Which part is physical, which part is plasmatic, and is there a direct relationship, cause and effect? And then you find, yes, there is. But the thing is, it's the soul that dictates, and the soul will always be truthful. So is there a breakdown in that communication? And I submit that there is in the vast majority of cases. So we're looking to bridge that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Claudia. Anyone else want to bring anything else? Usually we have a few talkative people here. And we thank you all for your participation, whether you're remain silent, because there is a silent line of communication, as Mr. Kesh has indicated. Not everyone is a talker, and you don't have to talk. Go ahead, Jefferson, please.
Oh, hello, Mark. Now I'd like to bring one point. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Alex, for the teaching. There's so many informations. And what I'd like to bring is that I think was the last plasma reactor group, or one of this point, our friend Jalal just came in the meeting, and he was talking, teaching and explaining many things for us as usual. And he brought to watch the Knowledge Seeker workshop 144th. That would be very important. Thank you, Jalal. And I just was watching it. It's amazing. I think it's first 1 hour and 30 minutes where Mr. Kesh explains the strength of the CH3 reactor working with amino acids and CO2 to create 3 different hydrogen strength, just like hydrogen plasmatic, deuterium, and tritium. And the interaction between them that creates the universal center line mass. Just to say something very simply, but the importance of that teaching from Mr. Kesh cannot be emphasized, because it matches as well with the teaching from Alex today, from the outer and the inner space, what is inside us and what is the connection, the common denominator, as an initial fundamental plasma, or the neutron, that's within the hydrogen of CH3 that we all have. And it's amazing, the connection that with teaching of Alex today can be done and understood well, at least for me, in this context. And we, in the beginning, we saw the picture that Dean took inside the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute in the last blueprint, where there were the bottles, the GANS bottles on the table, where we had the hydrogen bottle, deuterium bottle, tritium bottle, a bottle, and in the middle, probably CH2 with amino acid as well. So I said, oh, what a beautiful, because that came one step forward in this. I think Mr. Kesh is always teaching us or give us views and points very important in any detail. So I'd like to share with all that it's so wonderful, this teaching, and the how easy it is to just to interact with the fields of CH3, with the CO2 and amino acids, as well as brought that inside us, just to get it cut due in our kidneys. In the layers of the kidneys, we can produce as well the same field of the hydrogen, the 3 hydrogens. So we can maybe increase the energy of this connection throughout our body, the physicality, because we have at least 30% is physical matter state in this level. So the way that we can spark some fields or ignite or excite the fields of our inner world and the inner soul throughout all the CH3 fields, or inside
Professor?
us, try to find. Yes, that's it. I just going. Okay, that's the point.
Hi everyone.
Hello, Jalal.
Did you watch the 4/11 2015 AM BM sessions?
4/11. Let me check it here.
The
From
additional
2015.
the additional blueprint.
No, I didn't take it. Where it is, Jalal? Say again. There, you take note here. Listen, everything, Jalal.
I think he said April 11th, AM and PM, 2015, in the private archives.
4/11.
That's April.
Not April.
November, 4th of November.
Oh, 11/4, November 4th. I thought you were saying, okay, correct.
AM,
Here in Sweden, we mentioned the date before the
Right.
No, I saw that. I saw it as well, Jalal. Yes, AM. I saw AM, November 4th, 2015. Yeah.
And did you saw BM?
Amazing. No, in fact, no, Jalal. Only the AM.
In fact, if you go there and you understand it, and that means all of you guys, I don't think you need anyone to teach you anything anymore. Even you, Claudia.
Okay, I will see you, Jalal. I didn't see this yet.
Man will be listening to these teachings for thousands of years. I think he said hundreds, but it would take us quite a while just to understand them. But maybe things are about to change where he said we would be able to read and understand the patents and also replicate. For most of humanity, we'll be able to replicate some of this technology. And for those who can't, this is the reason we have the factories and the manufacturing. But he indicated most, because at this point, I think most don't fully understand. Okay, thank you, Jalal, for coming in. I was going to ask you what it feels like to be hugged by Mr. Cash on the soul level.
And you know, I hear you guys, but there is one thing really I would like to mention here. This high level strength of the field of the soul, the body and the emotion of the man, and his strength, it's not noticeable. You cannot notice it. The pre-plasma, guys, you don't see, you don't touch, you don't feel, you don't do anything with it. You need to believe in it. Believe in it by making the magnets, which by this magnet you receive the interaction with. So when he mentioned that, I told you what happened with the coldness of the body. That's all. That's all. But in my level, you know, in which level? A body and emotion which is connected to the physicality. No more, no less. Unless your emotion is high enough to reach the level of the soul, yes, then you will in a way not control it, but control the outcome of it. You demand what you want to take from it. So the pre-plasma, you do not really, you do not touch, you do not see, you do not hear, you do not feel, you do not breathe it, you do not smell it, because it is above the matter state. This is the point. It's not there, but we are working in a physical world with emotion which is connected to the physicality. Our emotion is not connected to the soul level, although it is connected, but we choose to go in a lower level, reaching the physicality, because this is the filter. We notice what's happening. That's all.
Thank you, Jalal, for sharing with us. I'm going to play a question that it was part of what Dean was asking, and Mr. Kesh went into something about the children of Moses, the tribe of Moses, brought a lot of devastation on this planet. And we know Mr. Kesh is on his mother's side from the tribe of Moses. But now he's saying this tribe, these children, are actually protecting the Kesh Foundation. And he said they've put everything on the line. And the soul of Moses is now repairing or redoing some of the things that went wrong. And so you'll hear Mr. Kesh speak of this. Is there anyone else who'd like to bring anything else? Then we'll play anew tomorrow, and then the final disclaimer, and the meeting will end. So that's a phenomenal change in the behavior. And I know Mr. Kesh said it, you know, it was due to greed, but things are being worked out. The soul of Moses is now rectifying the things that have gone wrong in the past. So it's just unbelievable the changes we're going to see, about to see, and experiencing more change.